Okay, and you were a student of Tim's at Harvard, is that correct?
I was a graduate student of his and then a colleague.
Okay. What, as we sit here today and Tim's research and papers and everything else are going on archive.org, what's the significance of this for this generation?
Well, it's the significance is that it involved research in consciousness expansion. The drugs were called consciousness expansion for psychedelic mean. And consciousness expansion was at the core of all the social transformation movements in the 60s. The civil rights movements, the women's liberation movement, which was also called consciousness raising, and the anti-war movement. These movements are sometimes called countercultural, but to be counter the mainstream culture was not their main intention. The main intention was to move beyond. The civil rights movement wasn't just against civil rights violation. It was, like in Martin Luther King's vision, a vision of black children and white children being able to have the same education. And the anti-war movement, yes, it's anti-war, but it's for peaceful coexistence with other people and allowing peaceful society to unfold their potential. In the same way, the environmental movement was a counter the depredations and the pollution of industrial corporations. And when Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, she said that was a consciousness expanding experience. People asked themselves, why aren't the birds singing? And I'm not saying that had anything to do with drugs, but there are certain drugs, these particular drugs that Leary and our project got involved in, that have the effect of stimulating our consciousness expansion. And when you expand your consciousness, it makes you think about what it is that you're doing, become aware of what it is that you're doing, and make better choices. Of course, I'm not advocating everybody just take their drugs. That was never the point, because there's many different ways of expanding consciousness. But these are tools, and to use them properly, it has to be trained, and they have to be studied and researched. It can also be used in healing. When people get over, for example, the treatment of addiction or alcoholism, which was often the application of drugs like LSD, used in the treatment of alcoholism, that involves a consciousness expansion, helping the addict become aware of how their life has been limited and affected adversely in their family and their relationships.
I think that would surprise a lot of people that, that LSD was used as a treatment for addiction.
And other drugs like now, ayahuasca, which is another consciousness expanding drug, used in treatment of cocaine addiction in South America and in Holland. And psilocybin is now being explored as a treatment for OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a kind of addiction. And LSD is again being used. Peyote was always used by the Native American Church in the treatment of alcoholism. So I think the treatment of addictions and obsessions, compulsion, and helping people get a deeper understanding of the nature of consciousness and the nature of the dying process, the death and dying process, making them aware of spiritual realities beyond the body and beyond the brain and beyond the usual understanding of reality that we have. Those are the potentials of those substances that we tried to explore in the 60s and that other people are continuing to explore now.
And I know you've done a lot of work on the whole idea of the transformative experience.
Yes, the transformation. How do you use? I wrote a book called The Unfolding Self. So what I sometimes call mystical experiences or creative insight experiences or experiences in the course of yogic practices, meditation experiences, can be also consciousness expanding. It's not about drugs. Drugs is just one tool for producing an altered state. And there are many other tools. But what's the process is, what's the meaning of those experiences? It's unlike any other drug. It doesn't affect the heart or the lungs or anything. It affects the way you look at reality, you see. And so you can't treat it like any other drug. That's a special category. And it's really something that we don't know very much about. But the potential of it is so great that for positive transformation.
So a young person today in 2009 who may not know a lot about the history of the 60s, but would encounter the Leary archives on archive.org, what could they hope to learn? What could they hope to get out of it?
Well, there's huge voluminous literature besides the Leary archives, that includes his and literature in all kinds of aspects. The scientific, the strict medical, scientific, technical aspect, how it affects the brain, all of that tremendous amount of literature. How it can be used in therapy and healing, what are the creative implications. Then there's literature, more sort of narrative kind of literature. I have myself edited four different books on collections of literature on accounts of LSD experiences and accounts of MDMA experiences, also my ayahuasca and the mushroom, and the science and the anthropology behind it. And so the literature is there, one can inform oneself, and it's too bad that these drugs are caught up in the whole war on drugs. We shouldn't have a war on drugs anyway. Drugs is a public health problem, and addictive drugs should be treated with health measures, not with imprisonment. And if you moved drug addiction out of the whole field of law enforcement, you would solve a major social problem and generate huge amounts of income, because there could be a licensing of people who need the drugs, have developed a dependency, as the United States used to have in the 19th century, and as England had until the mid-20th century.
So, how much of the world today in 2009 is, in some ways, owes a debt of gratitude to Tim and Richard and you?
Well, I don't know. It's hard for me to evaluate. Ramdas and I have just written a book together, giving our thoughts and reflections, but I think the true significance won't be known for some time. I think right now the 60s are sort of seen in mainstream media, not everybody, but certain level of mainstream media with zero understanding and a kind of a overall paintbrush of irresponsibility and hippie dropout, revolutionary, flaky kind of thing. A picture that maybe applies to some people, but as a total picture of the whole social movement is grossly distorted. And I think the true understanding of it, including the true understanding of Leary's impact, won't be clear until sometime later. And I'm hoping that our book will contribute to that.